Ryan over at Turbo 360 with part 5 of our messaging series. When we finished off last time, we pulled up our Android phone to try to communicate between two devices, and we were running into both some style type issues, which we tried to fix on the fly, and some platform issues, and also it wasn't that good of a UI to try to communicate with the app, so we said we would do one more video to kind of finish off this series. And so what we want to do today is, first, as you'll notice, I'm using my Android emulator because I have been neglecting the Android users out there. For that, I apologize. I'll try to switch it up. It can't really do both with all like the recording software and stuff. And anyway, so when we logged in and tried to message our other user, to message another user, you need to know their user ID, which is generated by MongoDB on the back end, and is a 25-digit string. So it's like near impossible to actually memorize someone's. It'd be like if you had to memorize a 25-digit phone number for everyone. So what we need to do is have a better UI and actually be able to send to people via their usernames. So that's the first thing we're going to have to do. And then secondly, since we have the time now, because that feature was like something I said we have to do. But since we have the time, I said, all right, we'll quickly touch up one or two Android things along the way, Android-specific things. And when we're working in the API, though, I want to work on pagination. So let's just say you have 1,000 messages between you and your friend, right? Which could be pretty realistic. When your phone goes to retrieve them, well, I think on your phone they're probably all stored locally. You don't want to retrieve 1,000 at once. You want to retrieve like 50 maybe, and that's done via pagination. So it's called lazy loading. So we're going to set up infinite scroll and lazy loading, pagination, all that stuff. So that'll be like a pretty, I'd say, more intermediate feature. But it's pretty common, I think, in most of your apps. You may have to do it like once you're past the basics. Like imagine every time you load your phone, you're pulling every message ever from your friend, right? That's what we're doing right now. So we need to straighten that out. And I think last time there was an issue I thought that there's an issue on Android with sending to HTTP. Like, on iPhone, we have to go and set that info.p list. I think that was just an issue because my computer was really struggling with the two, Xcode and Studio going, because I didn't think we had to set anything, and then I tried again today and it seemed to be behaving fine. So there's no step there, luckily. Well, this could be famous. Okay, close one. So when you log in, you'll notice at the top here, by default, I think I mentioned this last time, Android puts our status bar at the top, the same as they put this like arrow here, which is different than our iPhone one we were using. Which, by the way, if you guys use iPhone users, iPhone emulator users, this stuff is all very relevant because most of the time, if someone's hiring you to do a React Native project, they probably want both apps, right? That's why they're not using Swift. So by default, like the back arrows and stuff, these are handled by React Navigation. And if you actually just look into the actual code of React Navigation, it basically just says if Android, use this arrow, if iOS, use the other arrow. And what's nice about that is they're handling a lot of these platform-specific stuff for us. So, for example, as these things change, by using like an API and using their APIs, they might handle these things for us. So let's say Apple decides they have a new back button that they recommend, or that all the apps are using. If they'll probably update that for us, React Navigation, which is nice. Anyway, though, one of the conventions of Android is this status bar up here. So this tab bar up top, I personally don't really like it, and I think it might change in the future, to be honest. But I don't I just don't like it, and as the app creator, you can decide what you want to do. I'm going to move it to the bottom. So do tab bar position. And by the way, I looked this up before. These are things you do like one time when you create an app and like forget. So you just have to look at the documentation. But I think this is what we want. I'll give it a reload and find out. All right, and I'm gonna change the color too. So it's like a gray. And as you can see, well, one, our icons are gone. Two, our text is not that visible here, so we want to change this text color. So tab bar icon. Hold on. Show icon true. Okay, and I'm gonna just the text is there. It's just basically like white, so it's like impossible to see. I'm gonna just change to this color here. It's like slightly darker one that we were using before, which is 179, 179, 179. So I believe it's tab. No. I'm gonna try this. I'm not really sure if this is gonna work, but I may need to whip out the docs in a moment. A label style. Alright, so there we go. I lost our active tint color stuff, but kind of, I'm going to make this actually purple for first. And then the tint color stuff, I'm just not going to spend any more time on now. So we can get onto like the good. Oh, I have this in my config. Config. Colors purple. Let's do that. See, there seems to be some, like you can tell it's active. It's not great, but again, I don't want to spend any more time on it. I don't know if you guys notice, I keep getting, if I reload, these yellow warnings. The prop, I'll read it to you because it's too small. The prop on request close is marked as required in modal. So that is, for some reason, wasn't, I don't think it was a warning on iOS. Or maybe it wasn't, I was just ignoring it. But we want to just handle this because we don't want, sometimes if there's like a yellow warning like this, it's something that might become like a red ever later on. It's like a friendly reminder almost. So if you have them and you can, just get rid of them. So let's just go back to our home.js and find our modal and do on request close. And we'll just give it one of these functions. We'll give it the cancel. And hopefully, okay, got rid of our, well, didn't like something. Okay, luckily it didn't crash again. So now we're logged in. We need to jump back to our backend now. And just as a reminder, like if I go to this we've been using with Dan, cannot add a child that doesn't have. I thought I got rid of this issue as well. It's tough because I have like a million copies of these floating around, but let me. I think last time we had like a floating div like this, which looks to be good. Okay, and that was in the conversation view, I think. What list? So I'm getting an error here on Android. Let's debug quick. So this is usually how I debug. So I just take out like this flat list here, right? Because this probably has most of our logic. Let's refresh that. And now our error is gone, right? So I'll try one more time for safe. See, this is what I was talking on last video. Some of these things will only come on Android or vice versa. That's why you gotta be running both of them. Because now, like if I was just doing this each time I did a change, it would take me like 10 seconds to debug. Now it's gonna take about 5 minutes. Okay, so it looks like we have an extra closing tag, right? I'm going to just render null for now, see if what that does. See, I'm taking it apart like piece by piece. So now it's okay. So let's go into our message short component. I don't remember why I put this here. I'm wondering if it doesn't like this. I don't even know what this is from. I'm just going to do that for a second. Okay, so I don't remember why we have this, but it's like basically just floating text. So for some reason, our iOS was ignoring it, but this was crashing here. So yeah, we definitely don't want this. It's probably something commented out at some point or something. So get rid of that. And anyway, so if you remember before, anytime we want to send a message, like so I want to message Dan, I can't say Dan, right? I have to find his Mongo ID of this. So that's not going to work. So what we want to do is send Dan to the server, and then on the server side, retrieve his user ID and then use that ID. So let's do that real quick. And if you remember the command to start your server, so I'm going to jump to my other one here, is turbo dev server. And for whatever reason, I mean, well, I guess I'm using a Mac, so it makes sense. The Android's just so much more like taxing on my machine. I don't know if you guys have the same problem, but All right, let's just make sure our localhost 3000 is working. So I'm just going to hit one of these endpoints. I'll go to this message.me. Ooh, router.get. Oh, you know, it's API. So, like these IDs here, well, I guess, oh, so technically we could have ran a query against two user. But remember, I was manually creating these, and now we have another user logging in, and we need to like, none of this is really tied together. It's very like loosely tied together. So what we need to do is, like here on all these from user ones, when we create these messages, we're passing our own ID, which is very, oh, sorry, let me zoom in, guys. So we're passing this ID from the UI side, right? We have this in there from async storage. That would be impossible for us to remember to say, oh, this is my username. Like that's done by the app by default. We need to do the same thing for like when we send to a user. We need to handle this process of dealing with this ID. So what we're going to do is okay, first we need to create another user. So I know my account. Let me, oh man, this Android is killing me. But I will do it for the whole video, so do not worry. Alright, so we need to create a new user. Give it a second. Guys, so it turns out that our request, let me pull it up. If you check your dashboard in Turbo, again, just go to your app, data store. You'll see it created our user, but for some reason we didn't get the alert. And to be honest, I'm having a lot of issues with my emulators right now. I actually, when I do Android development, I have a device that I use, but like I actually use a physical device, which by the way, if you have a physical device, you should always be using that to test, much better. But I'm obviously using this to record for you guys. I'm having some sort of issue with my emulators today, so I have to go back to iOS. Otherwise I have to download a new image and stuff, and it's going to take a really long time. I'll do it for the next series, but anyway, so we have our user here, and we actually, sorry, I was just playing around in here. So our user actually has no username, which if we come, that's what we're trying to target, right? Like we need to pick a field that we're going to make unique and try to target. I think it should be username. So come in here and just edit it in your dashboard. Data store. Edit. I'll say Dan Turbo. And what I want to do now is make sure that in my my config file that I'm targeting my local host here. So just toggle that. And well, the reason we want to do that is we want to do some console logs. So I'm going to refresh this here and create this text message. Dan Turbo. Going to send that, and if I come back to here, we logged our request, right? So we have to user and from user. So this from user here, if we go to like look at my profile, that's this string. So again, this string we're saving via async storage. So there's no UI problem there. Like I don't have to enter that, right? But when I want to send it to someone, I want to send it to this same unique database string, right? Because what happens if someone changes their username or yeah, so that's what we want the actual user to be, is tied to this string, and that's where we need to tie our data to. We can't just tie it to the name. Like if we just ran all our queries to work off this, let's say someone changes their name, their username, right? Like whose messages are whose. Like that's why there's this unique field here that identifies the actual object. So basically what we want to do is we want to create the messages to send to this string, but be allowed to type in like how we just had it. So what we need to do is in our router.post message, we just need to get rec.body.toUser. And by the way, the naming of these variables is a little rough. This to user, from user. It probably could be better, but it's kind of looks like everything, right? It could always be better. Const to user equals rec.body. Maybe they don't like ES6 in here. All right. I mean this. Oh wait. There we go. So that's just a shorthand ES6 trick. So anyway, now that we have this user, before we create the message, we got to retrieve that ID. So what I'm going to do is say turbo I think it should just be user. And our params, we're going to say to user. I think you actually pass it like this. By default, this will say this does that. So we can just do this. And then I want to log the response. So I'm going to give that a refresh. And remember, that's going to log down here because we're on our back end now. Something got thrown off with my parentheses here. Sorry, it's with a very limited screen space with the recording, so some of this autocorrect or like plugins, they go on their own and I miss them. Sorry about that. Okay, Remember, this is the backend, so we don't need to restart it. We can just resend. And it gets no, this is a success right here. There's an array, right? But it's empty. So I'm guessing that we're getting a capital that we don't want. So one thing I'm going to do real quick is just do see this is capitalized. We want to do down cases on this side. Let's just call it 2 lowercase. And then that gets, we can't use our fancy method there, but that's my guess as to what's happening. Let's try this again. Oh, sorry guys, we're searching by, actually, we have to actually search by their username, that's why. This is what we were talking about before. But also, it does need to be downcased, so. Alright, look, check it out. So again, I just changed the query parameter by username, but once you do that, right, we have that new account. So what we need to do is get the ID here. So, and look, this is an array. So there's kind of something important we should go over. So if we go here to our data store, this is a very unopinionated data store. In the next series, we're going to use Mongo and do some more like advanced methods. But for right now, we're not enforcing any uniqueness on the username. So that is something you can do. And basically what you would do is you would move your create user to one of these routes, and basically like we just did the turbo.find, like here, you want to search for that username, and if it exists already, well, if it exists, don't let them create it type of thing. But for our purposes, what we're going to do is just take the first one of the array, and we'll assume that we will enforce uniqueness at a later point. So anyway, we need to grab this data sub 0, and then we can say dot ID, and let's see if that logs just our ID. Let's retry this. So right there, that's our ID that we want. So we're going to set user ID right here to this value. And okay, so we're going to have to add this to the promise chain. So we're going to say then data and so in here we want to say return turbo.create. And we're going to do the same message here with this rec.body, except we don't use rec.body. We're going to basically here, let's let's do this. Let params equal rec.body. And then here, once we get this data, instead of saying user ID equals, we're just going to kind of hijack it and say params dot to user. And then we can create our message. So we got rid of with our params. And I just want to console log these params before they go off. Okay, so get rid of this here. Create and grab this then block. That's what we need. Then all this then stuff. Although the fact that their nesting levels are off by 1 scares me, but oh, there we go. So we want to see what params go off with this message now. Let's give it a try. And again, it's going to show up down here. Error. Cannot read ID of undefined. Well, one, we should return an error there anyway, saying user not found. But let's try to not have an error for now. So look, here's our params. To user and from user are both these user database IDs, which is what we want. Now, that being said, when Dan logs in, he should get this message now. Let's see if it's working. So if I come here and log out, I gotta start using like 2 consistent users and passwords, because like half the time I forget what I... So look, here's this message. One problem is, look who it's from now. It's from my ID. So that's something we want to handle. Maybe we need a different property or something. Like, it needs to be differentiated. I'm not sure, but the point is, it worked. So now if he goes and sends one to me, all right. I go to my account. Check it out, the most recent message right there. And you'll notice our conversation view is going to be all off because we kind of change that user property. So we could either clean our data or run like a script, but we probably want to resolve this somehow. And that's kind of like an interesting question. So the most logical thing is just to basically have a different field. So we really need another field. But before I do that, we do want to handle this error, right? So I'm going to say if data.length is 0, reject new error. Sorry, guys. All right, let me see if that works. I think I had to throw an error and it should send us to the end of the block. Throw new error. So this should send us down here. So when you're actually creating your functions that return the promises, that's where you reject the errors. So my error got thrown here, right? Error, user not found, which is the error we just created, so that's good. So it skips all this stuff. But throw new error. We didn't get it on this side. And that's something we want to like actually get. So now we're making some useful error messages. So let's just jump back real quick and go to our home and see create message. Catch. Sorry, something went wrong. Please try again. What's interesting is we didn't get the alert here, so my one guess is not coming through from our utility function or on the server. So let's get that working quick. Let's go to our utils. Create message. I'm not doing anything with the error down here. Turn. All right, let's handle that error. It's weird that I'm not getting response or error. Let's log this response here. So I'm getting success. So perhaps our issue is in here. Okay, I'm just going to log data right here. It seems like our error is being created but not being sent back. Oh, actually, I think I know what's going on, but all right, so if you look here on our back end, well, first let's pass our error here. So we're this error here that we created. We don't want to use the default. We're going to give a custom error message now, and let's resend this and see if we know what's happening. So we have an error here, but we're saying success. So why is that? So look, when we get an error here, we say confirmation fail. That's just like as the API designer, something we made up. If we check our logs of our device, confirmation success, lots of different. Sorry, I'm just not used to using fetch. Okay, let's. Basically, we're not sending we're sending a 200 success on our side as a designer, but we're sending a fail. So we want to check for fail and throw an error quick. But just trying to see where I can log this. All right, I'm gonna write here. Instead of logging response, we're gonna log the response.json. Whoa. So we had an error there, but a different kind of error. Basically, if our body is going to be saying confirmation fail, that's what I'm trying to get to. Let me just do this. Didn't like this, the two JSONs. Promise. All right, so we got to get back to our send here. Create message. Let's try to log it in here. If I can find the function. Let's log that data. Now it's not working for me. So I got that all straightened out to restart my emulator and stuff. But if you come over here, right now we're returning, we're console logging this, so it's not getting back to our container. And response.json is just a promise. So that's why it's just logging some sort of promise. So let's get rid of this or count it back out and return the actual response.json back to control of our container here. And then here we have this console log of the data. Now let's try it one more time. And if we send that and check here, you'll see here we have confirmation fail, user not found. So that's coming across as a success because that's the way we designed our API. So that's like another thing. Like technically they're sending the message to us, right? We're just not making the message, but it's a successful request. So we're not sending like a 404 or something. We're sending confirmation fail. That's like a whole thing people debate on. I don't really have a preference, but that's how I usually do it. So what we need to do though is make sure we check for these confirmation fail. So what we want to do is in our, because there's very different definitions of fail, right? Like if our request doesn't go, that's definitely failing. Like where do we want to handle the errors basically? So if you come in here, before we navigate to this conversation, we want to say, well, basically we'll just check for fail and say if data dot confirmation equals fail. We'll do the same thing we did before. Throw new error, and we'll just pass in this data dot message. Else. All right, let's give this a shot now. So slight typo. User not found. So we got our alert, and then we're back in here. So I could just say, fix that. You can't. So the alert really throws off our like flow here. So you probably don't want to use an actual alert. Well, these could be more just like simulator issues. I'm sure you guys can tell I'm having a lot of simulator issues today. Well, point is you probably want to use a different thing than the native alert. That's what I always talk about. But for our purposes, it's okay. We'll have to reload now. It's something with the modal. The modal like behaves differently than all the other the simulator for some reason. And just make sure we can still create successfully. Okay, so that's working. We're not navigating to the right screen after, but we'll go back to that. Now that we could send messages to the other users and we're handling the error for if they're not existing, I want to work on infinite scroll. So what we're going to have to do is go to our, let's just go to our API real quick and turbo.post message. Try to see how many messages I have in my one, two, three. Oh, it's users. But this probably should have a decent amount of messages. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I have about like 20 messages, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit all of these. It's going to take too long. What I'm going to do is we're going to go back to our API, our modal, and on success, where is it? Where we navigate to the conversation. I'm just going to do nothing, just for temporarily. And what we're going to do is just create like 50 messages real quick. It'll literally take like 2 minutes. So here I'm also closing my, so let's get rid of that. This is like our default to reset everything, so we don't want that. I'm trying to just basically rapid fire these off. So I'm getting no feedback or anything. I'm assuming these are created. We'll check in a second. Throw in some lorem ipsum. Can't spell that right. All right, let's check our dashboard. Message, and we have a gajillion messages here. I want at least 50. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'll count to myself, sorry. All right, we need a few more. All right, that should be good. And before we forget, let's put our app back to how it was. And what I want to do now is log in as Dan Turbo. So go to your profile, log out. Oh, shoot, I forgot it's email. All right, so look at all these messages I have now. So, like, everything is actually pretty performant and fine. 10,000 messages, right? Because right now we're fetching all of them. So what I want to do is demonstrate how we want to handle that. So let's go back to our fetch messages function and utils and additional query params, right? So we want to pass a query param that says page, like page equals 1, page equals 2. So, all right, so we actually do that back in here. This dot set state. Okay. So just for now, just trust me, go to your constructor and under this message, just say current page, just say 1. Or else say 0. Let's say last successfully fetched page. We'll call it 0. So the first one we want to fetch is null. And if you come down to here where we fetch our message and we have this params here, let's just right here say page. And we're just going to say this dot state dot last. There's definitely a better shorter word for that, but I'm trying to make it very clear that there is no page 0. So why don't we do this? Oh, well, this is on our componented mount anyway. So let's go back. Let's just take this whole function, right? So this is componented mount, and I'm going to say this dot fetch fetch messages. Then here, let's make a method fetch messages, because we're going to need this twice. Right here, I'm going to say const page equals, we're going to do this. We'll get rid of this whole mess. And we want to add 1 to it. So we always want to be fetching the next page, right? And how do we know what our current page is? So what we also need to do is on success, we want to save this page. But we'll get back to that in a second. So for now, I'll just make sure this works on mount. So we're passing extra params we're not using. It shouldn't affect anything unless we did something bad, which we may have. See, this dot fetch messages. Let's get rid of our page here, see if that's throwing anything off. Oh, we need an empty. Okay, so that works. Maybe our ES6 attempted this. Oh, okay, because on the back end we're passing along all query params, so it's not just ignoring them. So this is working right now. It's just there's no results. So I was working on a different project where they just ignore extra stuff in the params and bodies, and I was using it to cheat and pass stuff around. But yeah, so this is working, right? So we have no page 1 on the back, so that's not working. So what we need to do is trying to think of a good way to do this. Let's go to our messages function. Let's just see how many we have. So fetch. Oh, you know what? We just have a generic resource. So this will work for all our resources later on. And here with this query, I'm going to just say, for now, delete query dot page. And let's just make this a let. And let's log the data dot length. So we want to see 50 plus as our number there. Okay, 63, right? So we have 63 messages. So let's kind of break them up into. Let's pretend each page is going to be 10 for illustration purposes. I would probably normally do 100, but then you guys will be sitting here all day while we create them. So let's do 10. And what we want to do is we need to break these up. So let's do, if you guys use the modulus operator, so we can do const. Actually, we can just slice the array starting at the index and go from there. So let's try that. So here we do data.length. Let's just say const page results equals data.slice. And we want to start at the page number. So I'm going to say const page equals query. Let me delete it from our query. But it's because we're not designing the complete data store, right? So we're working with what we have. If you were doing like your own custom data store, like we'll go into Mongo and probably the next series, you wouldn't even fetch all these from the server, and you're doing another added benefit of not like busying up your server. So once we have these, slice data.slice, and so we want to start at and we want to put this const up here because I'm going to be using it a bunch. This is just like a best practice. Page length 10. Because then we want to change it to 20. You only have to change in this one spot if we reference this variable like 10 times. So data.slice. So the starting index is going to be page length times the page. And then the number is going to be the page length. Now let's just do console log page results dot length and see if we get 10, 0. Okay. I can never remember which of these return in memory. Returns a shell. Alright, let's log this other stuff quick. $63.10. And then 0. Oh, is that the? You have to go to the ending index. Let me just try this for now. Alright, so this works, 0, 10. And we were doing, let's just see if we did like 20 to 30 if that works, or if it's 10, which is what we were trying. So, no, I think it's gotta be that. Yep, okay, so they're both indexes, it's not a length. So what we need to do is, for our starting point is going to be our page length times the page, and our ending point is going to be the page length times the page and plus the page length again. So again, is our starting index going to be whatever our just do -1. This what's that slice? And we have an off by 1 issue here, so we have to do the page length times the page, which for page 1 that's going to be 10. Oh no. Page 1. Typically when you're doing pagination stuff, I don't think you start at 0, because it's like usually like a browser readable thing. So we have to subtract 10 is what we have to do. So here where we add the page length. Okay, I'm just going to comment numbers here so you can see. Just pretend we were on page 3, right? If we're on page 3, the first item we want is going to be item 20. Oh, so we don't have the -1 is the good news, but we do page length times page, right? So we're going to get a 3 we're working with. So that's going to be 30. So we have to subtract the page length here. And then here, we're going to do page length times the page -1. We don't really need parentheses here, but I do them a lot just to be safe. Okay. And then let's log here, page results.length. Let's see if it's a nice 10. Ooh, I'm getting 9. Maybe there's no -1 at the end. Alright, there we got our 10. Sorry, I have to... Sorry, I was going to sneeze, but... Alright, so I think this last number is exclusive. That's why we don't need that -1. But basically, again, page length times page minus the length of the page gets us our starting index, and our ending index is going to be page length times page. So if we do this again, let's just send back our page results. Let's see if we only get 10 messages. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, so now we're only getting 10, right? Which is what we want. But 1, we can't get more now. And 2, we don't really have any way to pick which page to get. So we don't want to be picking what page manually. This has to be handled by the app for us. So our backend appears to be sending back the first 10, which is good. One thing I want to just try real quick is if like here is 63 for the last one. Do we need to handle that, or does array slice handle that for us? So let's just try. Let's just hijack this for a second and just say const page equals 7. You always want to be checking for these like edge cases. So look, it handles it for us, the array.slice. There's no error. Thank you, JavaScript. So that's our last one. So that should be fine. Although at the last one, we do need to somehow let our users know there's no more pages. So that's just something to note here. I'm going to comment. Remember, we only know the length of the array. They don't. Alright, so let's jump back here. And so what we want to do here, I have this const page declared outside our fetch messages, is on success, where we set state. I want to say last successfully fetched page equals this page here. So we just fetched page 1, right? So I have that in our state now. So next time when we go to fetch, this is going to be 2. So it's kind of just incrementing. Now for the fun part is, so let's say we scroll to the bottom here, right? We're not fetching anything new. How are we going to do that? So I just want to show you guys something. I'll leave that open. This is what I was talking about in one of the earlier episodes. You want to stick to these, like, for example, flat list, as opposed to when we were just rendering stuff, because they have so much like good baked in stuff. Like, I don't remember if I set this up or not. Like, there's pull to refresh you can set up. Like, for example, pull to Where's my list? I'm just showing you because this is going to be very relevant to pull the refresh as well. Let's go to your flat list and just type on refresh. And we're going to say this dot fetch messages. Oh wait, we don't want to call that here. Oh, sorry, I need to scroll back to the top. I apologize for the quick scroll, and bind and scroll back down. Okay. Okay, so we need a refreshing prop. And I'm going to say activity. I'm just going to steal this show activity indicator prop because we're already handling that on our initial load. And look, see you have this pull to refresh thing now. The problem is that right now we're not handling getting rid of it, and two is we're just fetching the same messages. Or are we fetching the second page now? But anyway, you guys kind of see what I'm getting at. We got this. You guys are probably used to it on your apps, like doing this pull to refresh, right? So that should probably be to get our initial, that's only going to be to reset our whole list. That's not going to help us with fetching the second page. But imagine if we could do something similar at like the end here. Like what if we could do the same kind of like action, get the activity indicator and fetch. So that's what we can do. If you jump back to the docs here, they have on and reached, this on and reached function. And it says called when the scroll position gets within the on and reached threshold of the rendered content. And then you give it a threshold here, let's just say 0.5 like the example. So I'm going to get rid of this on refresh fetch messages and refreshing, and we're kind of doing the same idea. And you guys probably don't even notice on most of your apps, but now that you learn this, you'll start to noticing all these little things. So again, this 0.5 is just from the docs, and then here I want to say this dot fetch messages. And now the interesting thing is going to be we're incrementing our in our function here on success. Let's see if it actually just works by itself. And it's going to be hard to tell at first because and not working because we just crashed. But you see, definitely want to do something, right? Watch. We get to the bottom, and all of a sudden something happened and we crashed. So what's going on? So let's see what happens on success of our fetch messages, because it looks like it's getting called. So this should keep working, this page +1. So when we first load, and I'm going to even throw in a console log here, you'll probably see a request for So look, our first fetch right here, there's a 1. Oh, and then it already did 2 by itself, because we'll fix that error in a second. But let's scroll to the bottom now. Oh, and you see, look, it did 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, which is correct. And we got the response of only 3. And then 8, we got back a nothing, and our messages disappeared. So what's happening here is we're not adding anything to our arrays. We're just kind of like because the first time we did it, we just said that's all our messages. So when we set our state, we're just setting all the messages, right? Now we actually have to combine them into one array. And as you can see on the last one, this one returns back nothing, and then we're just setting our state empty. So the two things we have to do are, one, handle this case of, well, in general, we have to add our data together. Like, that's the whole point of using React. We can build up this store locally, lazy loading and such. And two, why are these, basically we reach the end, right, when we do that, and they all just start firing off. We need to prevent them all from going at once until we scroll down again. So those are the two things we need to work on. So the first thing we want to do is, let's fix our array method here. And what we can just do is sort messages by date. So we had this whole sort thing we were doing locally too. I'm not going to do both of those right now, but I'm just going to take whatever's sorted. So theoretically, our sets of data could be each set sorted, but not overall sorted. No, you know what, I'll just do it. No, we should just sort them all, actually. Sorry. It's a little confusing, though, because then if you're scrolling and they sort, you're going to... Yeah, we shouldn't resort them. That really should be handled by the server. But we were just doing it for like more practice. So let's just say you get 10 messages, right? We can't sort them again while we're scrolling, because then the user's going to have a bad experience if for some reason the messages they got were not, somehow end up in the first 10, let's say. Then they're going to think they're missing something. So that's why we don't want to resort. We'll keep them sorted in their pages, if that makes sense. They should all be sorted from the server anyway, but we'll leave that as is. But what we want to do here is say let new messages equal object.assign this.state.messages. We just want to make sure now that we have on our constructor an empty array, which we do. Otherwise, it's going to crash on our first one. And source, yeah, just put an array here. You need your source and your target. And then what we're going to say is sorted for each message new messages dot push, and it should push them to the end. So push message, and when we set state here, we're going to say messages is going to be new messages. Let's try this again now. We haven't handled our like non-stop fetch issue, but for now let's just 5, 6, scroll slowly, 12, 13. I'm counting in my head, but I want to see how many we have. Alright, 63. And look, now it's stopping. Cool. So we just got all our messages. And again, all the logic is happening right here in this +1 to the page. And on the back end, then we're sorting by that page. And on success, we increment so we know what our last page is. The last thing we want to handle is, I was talking about this pull to refresh before. We want to have a similar thing where if we get to the bottom, there's some UI, and we also need to be blocking these extra requests. Like, we don't want them firing off at once like that. So what's happening is it just keeps hitting, saying on-end reach, because it takes a little while for the network to fetch those extra messages. And it's firing off like 8 HTTP requests at once, which we don't want. So it kind of defeats the point of the lazy loading. So that's what we need to fix right now. So if you go back to the docs here, Footer. List footer. Okay. Pull to what is scroll loading? Okay. Anyway, so let's go to the footer component. I wasn't sure if they had like a new feature or something that could be useful here, but list, flat list. Okay. So right here we can say list footer component, and I'm gonna just do this inline real quick. I think it should be okay. I'm just going to put activity indicator for now. So I just want to see now if we scroll, if we can hit that activity indicator. You see, oh, it's really fast. Hold on. You can see at the top there. So let me dismiss all these and just watch real quick at the bottom. You're going to see a little, and it's gone already. So what we want to do is the same as here. Just for convenience sake, I'm going to make another method here called let's say show. We want to distinguish between like the other activity indicator and our footer. Show footer activity. So I'm going to say false. I'm going to actually call this or fetching pages, which is going to be true, and then call it fetching page. Show activity indicator false. So here on our first success, right, I want to say fetching page false. Sorry, page. Okay, so basically we're going to see that again, which is a little, right? And then it gets set false on our first fetch. So we can probably get rid of the original activity indicator. I'm going to leave it for now. Doesn't really matter. Okay, so what we also want to do is, before we just had that set to true in our constructor, right? Let's actually fix that, because it should be false and we should set it to true when we're fetching. So this activity indicator and the fetching page are going to be false. I might get rid of activity indicator just because it's adding. No, I'll just leave it. But we're going to set those to false, right? Fetch messages. Okay. And then what we want to do here is, before we fetch these messages, start the activity indicator. And I'm just only going to focus on our new one for now. And I'm going to call it fetching page to true. And then I'm going to just do it as a callback on our set state, which is kind of weird, but I'm going to give it a try. And this entire thing so when we fetch message, we're going to set ourselves to loading, and then after that, there's some UI indicator, we're going to get the messages. So let's try that real quick. So that seemed to have worked there. And now let's go down to the bottom. Do you see it really quick? It's hard to see. And now our screen's too big. So, well, first our threshold is too high. Well, it's good for UI. The goal is for the user not to see it, but our Turbo API is a little too fast. So let's dumb this down to like 0.1. So we don't even start fetching till we're at the bottom. So basically this decides like when you want to fetch. So like now it'll be like a little slower, but I can see if I could slow the animation down for you guys. Device. Slow animations. Let me see if this can. I think feeling it's going to just scroll really slow. Well, anyway, I think you guys could see it now. So the thing is, we can only see that like one time, and then our list is too big, and we kind of like it's harder to catch. We're firing off a bunch of requests at the same time right now is the problem. So what we want to do is I just want to log here this page. You guys are going to see what I mean. Oh, we're already logging it. Let's open up the debugger. And look, we already hit 2 and 3, which is kind of early. Like it's firing off two at a time, which we don't want. So what we need to do, and look, remember, we have this callback here, right? So you can't fetch until you've already set the state here. So all I'm going to do is, and remember, we don't increment until we've received the previous success. So what I want to do here is just say, if this dot state dot fetching page. So if we're already fetching, let's just return. Let's give that a try now. Oh wait. Fetching true. Okay, so our callback is not. Let's just try this. Because set state is async, but I think it should be fast enough, but okay, let me think for a second. No, we want to go back to what we had. Sorry guys. Except up here, before we even get to the set state part. The first thing we check. So if we're already fetching return, and let's just log here what we were assigning for the page, so you can see this is going to get hit a few times now, because the first time it's going to fail, and the second time we'll get through. Alright, so, and by the way, this issue with the well, okay, so that works. So we got one page so far. So we have 10 results, right? So let's very slowly scroll. Well, this server is very fast, which makes it kind of difficult. But we look, see, we got 2, and we got the response from 2 before we got 3. But that's not really a normal. We're also on our local host. But most times you're on a project, your responses aren't going to be this fast. See, it's weird because it's just too fast. That's on the local host. Let me try on the web one, see if it's any slower. Oh, you know what? I haven't deployed our. Let's do turbo deploy real quick. So our new app isn't up there, so it's just kind of like turbo deploy. Yeah, so we hadn't redeployed, so our page query was just being, that's our original issue here, just handled like a query. So message app, let's make sure I'm on the right project. Yeah, it looks right. Okay, so you see it's like a little longer because now we're actually on the, like over the air, but still pretty quick. But let's just jump back here and see if it's any better with that double bounce. I'm still getting a double. Hold on, let me just check my code again real quick. Basically, it's not it's not being blocked fast enough is the problem. I mean, it's not a problem, but it's not ideal. And by the way, like this bounce at the bottom is like, now you can kind of see that better now they're on the network. It's pretty good. And this is the end, so that's why we're getting stuck here. Let me just look at our code real quick. So we want to say set fetching to true, and do this. It's also hard because we have a very short list, but I'm going to move the set state up there, see if that makes any difference. Yeah, I'm still getting this double. Again, we're fetching the different pages, which is good. It's just they're firing off too fast. Even probably adding like a timeout, but that doesn't sound ideal. I would just leave it for now. This set state. I'm just gonna get rid of this callback version because it doesn't appear to be working or helping with the matter. So delete that and I'm going to set my threshold to 2. Just to see. This should be the opposite. This should make them start firing off quicker, but oh, there we go. So it's getting better. I mean, the thing was with like this kind of stuff, the flat list. It's like you're basically giving control to them to decide when to fetch the stuff, and you can try stuff like this, but just kind of let it do its thing. Yeah, the last thing we have to do is at the bottom. We need to stop or keep calling this when we know we've reached the bottom. So how do I want to let us know we're at the bottom? So this is not going to be perfect because I don't feel like setting headers and stuff. We're just going to let it do that 8th request, right? And then we're basically going to say if we do a request and success and we have no data, then it's time to stop. So let's just do that. And it doesn't require us doing anything else on the back end. So if I come here to fetch message, I'm going to say if sorted.length is 0, which I think we're getting back an empty array. Let's use a ternary. Let's just say const final or end reached is going to equal this will just return true or false. Then here we'll just pass that in. I'm going to throw a console log in here because I'm just curious if we are even getting empty array or not. So 10, 10, 10. I'm just going to say 3, and then I'm hoping 0. Right, we're about to find out. 10, 3, 0. Now we're getting all these zeros. And look, it just keeps indefinitely incrementing. Look, it's tried to fetch 14, 16, 19. So we want to stop this. So what we're going to do is page or end reached that we're not going to fetch. And the last thing we want to do is end reached. Oh, that should stop the activity indicator actually, so hold on. So look, the user has a good UI, they see the activity indicator, now they're at the end, and it's still going though, so we need to stop that. Let me see if, I requested 9 and it stopped, or it got to 9 and it didn't fetch, which is good, but I'll throw in here. Oh, you know what we do? We just set the list footer component to only show if we're fetching. Let's come down here and just say this.state fetching page, and if we are, we have the activity indicator, and if we're not, we just want nothing. And let's give that a try. And look, see how now we're at the end? I'm going to do it one more time because this is actually like a very good feature if you can set it up in your app. So we have infinite scroll set up with pagination. So we're scrolling and keep watching at the bottom here. Well, it's too fast, but the server is just too fast. So we don't see there. You see it. We finally caught up, but now it's going, and we get to the end, and there's no more, and it stops. Now the last thing we need to add is that pull to refresh I was talking about. So this is building up our store, right? We need one more method when we want to like start over. So now this is like our stuff. So we want this pull to refresh that I was showing you before. So I'm going to say on refresh. And what we should do is use the same. Oh, I'm going to just make a new one. It's going to be similar because I'm not trying to overcomplicate things. But let me just get rid of this slowed animation. Test, debug. Okay, I'm going to call this dot refresh, and I'm just going to copy and paste some stuff real quick so we can finish this off. But you'll see there's going to be a slight difference because we want to get rid of our old store. So that's where this is going to differ. So fetch messages, we do all this stuff. Well, we should reuse this function. So what I'm going to do is say this dot fetch messages, and I'm going to pass in this page. And then, see, the problem is that we're crossing too much stuff, like, because if we reach the end, we should be able to refresh. So I'm just going to make a new function for now, but that could be a good exercise for a later day. And then when we set state, we're going to have a difference because we're deleting their store. So I'm just going to make them different. And again, we're reusing a lot of logic, but so the first thing I want to do is I want to say this dot set state, and I'll set fetching page to true, but I want my activity indicator at the top back. Show activity indicator. Or we might need to add a list header component. We'll see in a second. I'm going to set those to true, and I'm going to fetch, but here my page is always going to be 1. And then here, I'm not going to combine the arrays. I'm just going to wipe out my old one. Because that's what the thing is, users refreshing. We don't want this like half mixed state of some old, some new. Let's new message. So we don't need any of this. I guess we could leave the end reach stuff. Alright, so we got that there, which I like. We need to get it to go away, though. There we go. So now we have this pull to page is not defined. So on refresh, this is always going to be 1. Let's give that a try now. Alright, so we got all of these. We can scroll to the bottom. We're asynchronously fetching our pages as we go. Now we're at the bottom, right? Now I've been in my app for a little. This data is old. By the way, if I click this and come back, this data doesn't refresh because we're not remounting, right? So I need to go refresh. So I come to the top. What I'm going to do is pull like you do on all your devices, and maybe I don't want the activity indicator. I think maybe pull to refresh has its own. Let me just check real quick. Show activity indicator. I'm just going to do this for a second. I think it has its own built-in one, see? And again, this is the thing where it's too fast. Like if you have a really slow server, or watch this. I'm going to do set timeout. So I'm trying to set a timeout, so there's going to be a 3-second delay before we can get our data. Let's see if it works. Alright, see now I have this problem with the tube, I'm just going to leave it for now, but you see how now, like, alright, sorry, I know what to do. We could get rid of our actual activity indicator. Now we have it built into the header. So go to your render block. Just comment all this out for now. Let's refresh. And again, we're simulating it because it's too fast. But you see now how we get this real, like when you pull refresh on like a real app, where you're like stuck like this. So this is resetting our list, while this is the scroll at the bottom is pagination. And as I said, this is like a definitely more intermediate feature, but definitely necessary. And very performant since you're using the flat list and stuff, and looking pretty nice. And look, pull the refresh. Cool. Yeah, so I mean that's pretty impressive that we got that done. I think that pretty much rounds it out. Again, if you want to do more, set this up in here for practice. Also, I don't remember why we'd never, like why this is offset. That could be a good one to look at. But yeah, I'm pretty pleased that we got through the pagination and infinite scroll. Definitely a good feature. Definitely, if you do that in one of your apps, someone will, notice it. Like, it's how you should be doing stuff. You don't want to overload. We don't want to be fetching extra data for the user and also on the server side, so you're going to save your users and clients money. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I think next we're working on some Google Maps type stuff, so I'll see you in the next series.